are going to learn about line plots. A line plot is a graphical representation of data from a table. So, say we have a table that shows how many people in a neighborhood own a cat, a dog, or a rabbit. So we see in this table that the three pet choices are cat, dog, and rabbit, and then the numbers on the right. So 5 cats are owned in the neighborhood, 6 dogs are owned in the neighborhood, and 1 rabbit is owned in the neighborhood. We can represent this table on a line plot. So when we're creating a line plot, the first thing we do is draw a line. Then, for this table, we write on the bottom the title of the left-hand column, pet. And then for each type of pet, we make a little mark on the line. So there's a mark for the number of cats in the neighborhood, a mark for the number of dogs, and a mark for the number of rabbits. And then for each pet owned in the neighborhood, we make a dot. So there are 5 cats in the neighborhood. So we're going to draw 5 dots above the cat mark. So that's the cat mark, and we draw 5 dots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now for the dog mark, we see that there are 6 dogs in the neighborhood, so we're going to draw 6 dots. And we're going to draw them at about the same level as the cat one. There we go, 6 dogs in the neighborhood. And then for rabbits, we draw just 1 dot because there's only 1 rabbit owned in the neighborhood. So now we can look at this line plot and we can learn something from the vertical height of each of these columns. The higher the stack of lines is, the more there are in the group. So we see that dog has the highest vertical height, and that tells us that dog is the most owned pet in the neighborhood without looking at the actual numbers. And we see that rabbit has the lowest vertical height, so that tells us that rabbits are the least owned pet in the neighborhood without looking at the actual numbers. So this line plot lets us easily compare the size of each group, and we can answer common questions such as which type of pet is owned the most, or which is the most frequently owned pet in the neighborhood. And because the vertical height of dog is the highest, we know that dog is the most frequently owned pet. And once again, we can look at the vertical height of rabbit and see that it is the least frequently owned pet in the neighborhood. And that means that cat is right in the middle of being the most and least frequently owned pet in the neighborhood, and we can see this because its height is in the middle of dog and rabbit. We can also look at how many people in a neighborhood own a cat or a dog. So we see that there are 5 marks under cat. So that means there are 5 cats owned in the neighborhood. And then we can add the number of dogs owned in the neighborhood, and we see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marks for dog. So there are 6 dogs in the neighborhood. And then we can add these numbers up, and we find that there are 5 plus 6, 11 cats and dogs owned in the neighborhood. So overall, using a line plot instead of a table lets us easily compare the size of each group without looking at the specific number.